being sold at higher prices. At the moment, President Macri is meeting with his cabinet to define the policies that will be announced Monday morning. There's great expectation for this announcement, as it's their chance to appease the market as well as the people, who are clearly unhappy.
It's thought the IMF could demand swifter cuts in spending as a condition for releasing its funds early. On Thursday evening, thousands of teachers, workers and students from Argentina's public universities protested against the government's austerity measures.
Members of over 57 public universities are demanding a decent wage increase as they march against the budget crisis. After a 72-hour strike, protesters gathered outside the National Congress.
There is no state policy in place for public education. In a meeting addressing higher education and honouring 100 years of university reform, public education was, again, declared a universal human right and a state obligation. The state must support public education from primary school up to university.
Some of the demands are inflation-based salary increases, regularization of hired teachers and ad honorem teachers, a teachers training fund, and increased public university budget.
People are protesting against the crisis being faced by the science and technology as well as university sectors. Today, specifically, is the crisis of the National University, which is reflected in teachers' salary cuts, which the government aim to slash by 15%.
Since February, teachers are refusing to accept insecure agreements made during negotiations with the provincial and national governments.
Students are spreading the strikes and discussing the continuation of the demonstrations. They are in a major disagreement with the government. A government that continues with meetings but without hearing the general complaints. A government that does not give answers and says the only possibility is to make cuts, which will lead to the closing of the public university.
Mauricio Macri's government is plunging into a deep crisis and does not want to accept it. Supposedly in the next few hours, the unions will meet with the Education Minister Alejandro Finocchiaro, but the unions are not optimistic that their complaints will be heard.
The Spanish Prime Minister is now in Costa Rica. He was met on the tarmac by the Costa Rican Vice President. He's already met with President Carlos Alvarado. Later today, both will host a meeting about the environment and climate change.
Two large areas of issues that we will be addressing. The issue related to democracy and issues of the region linked to the issues of democracy and sustainable development. The carbonization plan, all energy issues are like the large areas.
Francisco Francia has more from San Jose.
Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has been visiting Latin America, making stops in Chile, Bolivia, Colombia, and ending this tour in Costa Rica on Friday. He held a keynote address for government officials who are interested in environmental issues like climate change and lowering dependence on carbon fuels. Furthermore, he met with President Carlos Alvarado on Thursday night to further discuss environmental issues and cooperation strategies between the two countries. A main point of this discussion of his tour has also been the preparations for the upcoming Ibero-American summit.
A group of Venezuelan migrants have been repatriated by the government through the Homeland Return Plan.
Entering the town of Roraima, Brazil, the first thing anyone sees is refugee tents set up by the Brazilian army for Venezuelan migrants. They appear to be a sign of fraternity, a welcome for those coming into the country.
They offer to give us documents to give us legal residence so we may work. They tell us the country's doing well, but once we arrive, the work we are offered is to mow lawns, to do infinite menial work that we don't even know how to do. We are all professionals. We are out of our depth.
Moving on to Boa Vista, the capital of Roraima, the reality of migrants became apparent.
There is no work to be found. And where you can find something, they pay you less than the good Brazilians. They want to trade us as slaves. We came here believing lies, that everything was great, that there was work, that life was easier.
They came to Venezuela morally bruised.
This was an unforgettable experience. We are closing the door on a bad experience. There is no work to be found. I used to be a mechanic in Venezuela. I had a house. In Brazil, I found no work. I live on the street.
Most of them who migrated come from humble backgrounds and were greatly affected by the economic crisis. But crossing the border, things were worse.
The image that was painted for us about Boa Vista was completely different from reality. We went hungry, which we never experienced back in Venezuela. We couldn't find anything to eat over there. I don't recommend migrating to anyone.
We faced reality when we arrived to Boa Vista. We were attacked by the police. We were mistreated by the people. Our water was cut off. Our basic services.
They trusted in the Brazilian government's supposed solidarity.
They are manipulating the migration issue so that the people continue to flee Venezuela. I know many people who regret ever leaving, who want to go back but can't find a way. They are sleeping on the streets. Some people living in tents were recently attacked by a group of xenophobes who tried to burn them alive.
These migrants warn about the business of migration.
The government receives aid from Venezuelans. The UN gives them funds for us, so the more people that arrive, the more money the Brazilian government gets. But we never see those funds. We live in tents that are taken down before UN observers arrive, because we are supposed to be given proper refuge. But nobody cares.
Now they are back in Venezuela.
I want to welcome you all back to your country, to the land of Simón Bolívar.
185 migrants were repatriated and provided aid by the Venezuelan government. They were then transported to their own states. About 1,230 migrants have come back from Brazil, thanks to the Homeland Return Plan.
On Thursday, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro said he will keep his promise to deliver on the economic recovery plan.
Over the past 10 days, we have seen that we are on the right track. We will push forward until we stabilize our economy, until production is up and the market recovers. Maintaining fair wages, a decent income, is key for our economic plan. I can confidently say that we are doing well and we will only do better.
We'll take a short break now. More news in a minute.
An occasion to enjoy the cultural diversity that defines our South American essence. Come along to find out the story behind these personalities, traditions, and artistic expressions that unite us as a whole. Real Lives. Saturdays, only on Telesur.
Ecuadorian police have clashed with protesters at a march to promote the rights of immigrants. The march was in opposition to a nationalist group protesting against Venezuelan migrants. The police moved in to separate the two groups, but then turned on the anti-fascist demonstrators, blocking their path and firing tear gas.
We are defending the freedom of movement for all people, because we all have the right to work with dignity. We are all brothers and sisters. We are all people who have the same rights, regardless of where we are from. We all have rights that must be respected by a government that is currently responsible for the repression we suffer.
The country is completely disorganized. You can find 4 separate groups protesting against an unstable government, a government that has no clear position to mediate and to create unity in the country. It is very worrying because from here we can see that Latin America must rise again. From Ecuador, things must change radically. We can see political dinosaurs engaging in fascism and extreme capitalism, and the people is rising against it.
Political tensions in Brazil are on the rise. Supporters of the left-wing candidates are being threatened with violence by members of the far right. Our correspondent in Sao Paulo, Ignatius Limas, has the story.
At 4:30 p.m. on Wednesday afternoon, a member of left-wing presidential candidate Guillermo Boulos' campaign was talking on the phone outside campaign headquarters when a car stopped next to her and a man inside shouted, "Screw Boulos, here we support Bolsonaro." "Was that fascist?" asked the campaign member, and that's when the man pointed a gun at her. A complaint was filed and the perpetrator's license plate recorded with the police in Sao Paulo's Pinheiros neighborhood.
Campaign committee members, especially those working for presidential candidates, have special protection under Brazilian law, so a threat of this magnitude against them is a very serious issue.
In addition to this, 2018 has seen a rise in violent attacks against members of the left wing. A few months ago, buses in the Lula caravan were fired upon by unknown assailants. Human rights activist and councilwoman Mar Franco was assassinated, and recently, councilwoman Taliria Petrone had her campaign material seized by a policeman who also pointed a gun at her. All of the attacks were against figures of the Brazilian left wing.
Bolsonaro has all the political responsibility for this attack. He has encouraged the use of firearms. He takes the hands of children and have them do gun gestures, normalizing these actions. The seeds of Bolsonaro, planted so long ago, are being harvested today.
Both neoliberal candidate Geraldo Alckmin and far-right Jair Bolsonaro advocate for the free use of weapons. This in a country that reached a record 62,500 homicides in 2016, the same year of the parliamentary coup against then-President Dilma Rousseff.
Young people have become the major targets of drug violence in Mexico. We have more in this report.
Paulina must walk these streets every day to get to her school in Mexico City. She must then go to work in the neighboring city of Pachuca. While on her daily journey, she has had violent encounters with criminal gangs. She doesn't know anyone who has not been a victim of violence.
They take our backpacks. They look through our clothes. They even kidnap people.
Adrian also lives in this municipality. He too has fallen prey more than 10 times. He doesn't believe an increase in police officers will have any real impact on crime.
I think it's more important to promote education, because most people drop out of a school and they have nothing to do. That is something real.
A study reveals that Ecatepec is one of the most dangerous places. The crime levels there even surpass other cities plagued by the warring drug cartels.
They rob people going from their houses to their jobs or even to the market. They also break into homes. Families are hurting deeply, but these acts of violence are not in the news headlines.
He still holds the hope that political change will translate into action.
There has been a change of federal and municipal parties. It will be very interesting to see if this will make a difference.
The president-elect has promised economic aid to young people. The motto of that program is scholars, not gunmen.
El Salvador's foreign ministry has said 3 Salvadorian minors were sexually abused in an immigration shelter in the state of Arizona, United States. The abused minors were 3 girls aged 12 to 17, according to the Vice Minister of Salvadorians Abroad. They were torn away from their families because of the Trump administration's zero-tolerance policy on immigration. The vice minister says she's expecting the speedy reunions of separated families. Bolivian President Evo Morales has inaugurated the 8th line of the cable car in La Paz. It will be open to the public in September. We go to our correspondent in La Paz, Freddy Morales, for details.
Buenos días.
The airline of the teleférico that will run between La Paz and El Alto will start operating in September. As is tradition, it transported its first passenger, President Evo Morales, who inaugurated the new project. The first line of the teleférico was launched in 2014 and was a big success both as means of transportation and as a tourist attraction. It was such a success that the government decided to build 2 more lines that were equally successful. Then came the launch of the second phase, the construction of 7 new lines. When it began its operation, the 3rd line made it to the Guinness Book of Records as the highest and most extensive teleférico for public transportation in the world. Since the lines of the teleférico are interconnected, they have tremendously reduced traffic jams and have become a popular mode of travel and an alternative to underground. It would have been impossible to build an underground transportation system in La Paz, as more than 260 rivers flow through the city. The first 7 lines carry between 170,000 and 190,000 passengers every day. About 147 million passengers traveled on them between 2014 and 2018. The cost of this project is $740 million, and all of the 10 lines will come into full operation in the first quarter of 2019.
Thank you, Freddie, for that report. The Trinidad and Tobago government says it is prepared to pay close to $150 million in severance for workers affected by the Petrotrin oil refinery closure. The government announced plans to close the 101-year-old refinery earlier this week. Workers over the age of 55 will receive an early retirement package. The package for younger workers is still being worked out. There's no exact date set for the closure.
The figure will be huge. It will be large because, first and foremost, the base salary of Petrotrin is big. So, because any calculation obviously will have to be on base salary.
Are you talking about the hundreds of millions or $1 billion plus? You say huge.
I would say it will be significantly more than $1 billion. The termination benefits for the workers, the packages, could be in excess of $1 billion.
And that is to be paid by taxpayers, yes?
It's part of the cost structure of this reorganization. But that is a small figure compared to the hemorrhaging lost on an annual basis.
It's Independence Day in Trinidad and Tobago. The 56th Independence Parade was held at the Queen's Park Savannah in Port of Spain. This year's parade is the first for Trinidad and Tobago's first female president, Paula Mae Weeks. The country gained independence from Britain in 1962. Grenada has set a date for its national referendum. The vote will determine if the Caribbean Court of Justice will be the country's final appeal court. November 6th this year will be a historic day for the Caribbean because both Grenada and Antigua and Barbuda will hold their referendums on the same day. The vote requires a 2/3 majority to be passed.
The time is now for us in this land of ours to make a bold decision. And therefore, tonight I take this opportunity to announce that on November 6, 2018, our country, our citizens, we call upon to make one such bold decision to vote in a national referendum for the Caribbean Court of Justice to replace the Privy Council as the final court of appeal for Grenada, Carriacou, and P.T. Martin.
Usain Bolt has played his first professional football game. The Olympic legend went head-to-head for the Central Coast Mariners. He had only played for about 20 minutes, though, in a pre-season practice match. The Jamaican star had a few scoring chances, but couldn't find the net, apparently because he wasn't fast enough. His team picked up the slack, though. They won 6-1.
Jones does a good job. Drake has a little moment there and nearly spills out in his wicket.
Time for another short break. More news after.
Queremos verdad, reparación integral, pero sobre todo justicia, pero justicia social.
How many ways there are to tell a story? The different perspectives of our nations are on Telesur documentaries. Sundays, only on Telesur.
We are always there tracking the news. We seek equality. We defend the truth. It's a hard job, but we are not alone. We count on a new ally.
Welcome back. Aretha Franklin's funeral is currently underway in Detroit, Michigan. These are live images from her funeral, aptly titled "A Celebration Fit for the Queen." The guest list includes fellow musicians, famous actors, athletes, religious leaders, and the former U.S. President Bill Clinton. The U.S. music icon died of cancer on August 16th at the age of 76.
Put your hands together one more time for the Clark sisters. At this time,
the body of Senator John McCain is in Capitol Hill, Washington, D.C. for the first time to lie in state. McCain passed away at age 81 last Saturday. After his funeral service on Thursday, his body was taken to the ornate hall for people to pay their final respects. Dutch police have shot a person suspected of stabbing two people outside Amsterdam's main train station. The victims and suspect are now in the hospital. The station had to be shut down as police responded to the incident. Commuters looked on in horror amid the heavy police presence. And the case of 14 migrants who died in 2014 trying to reach the coast of Spain has been reopened. Our correspondent in Madrid, Eduardo Marín, has more.
The Spanish judiciary has ordered the reopening of the case of the death of 14 migrants on February 6, 2014, on the waters between Spain and Morocco. The deaths were part of a group of migrants who were trying to swim their way into Spain, but were met by security forces who used various methods to hold back, including shooting rubber bullets at them. This is the second time this controversial case has been reopened at the request of Migrant and Refugee Administration. Back in 2014, the PP ruling party said they had not intervened, but eventually video came out showing the opposite. These forceful actions likely caused the deaths of the 14 migrants. Today, the case is reopened yet again so that the witnesses can be heard again.
And now it's time to bring you some other stories from around the world.
The Russian Federal Security Service, or FSB, has confirmed the arrival of one of its nationals from Germany after fighting in Syria. The 31-year-old man was involved with a Russian militant group called the Caucasus Emirate during his time in Russia. He then German police finally arrested him last year. His identity is still unknown. An activist who was on hunger strike outside the Bahraini embassy has been rushed to hospital. Ali Mushaima is the son of Hassan Mushaima, leader of the Haqq movement in opposition to the government in Bahrain. Ali's father is currently imprisoned and being denied medical treatment as his health deteriorates. Ali began his hunger strike in support of his father at the beginning of August. He stresses that he will continue until the rights of every prisoner in Bahrain are upheld.
I have no choice. I don't want to sleep in the street, of course. I want to be with my wife and my daughter. But I tried, different things. I wrote a letter to MB. I contact different human rights organizations, but nothing changed. I feel my father is dying. They are killing my father slowly, because when you deny, 70 years old man from his medicine, his body will not take. We will not take it.
2 politicians have been arrested trying to flee Uganda. Former pop star turned politician and outspoken critic of the government Bobby Wine is one of them. According to the men, they were fleeing to seek treatment for injuries they received while allegedly being tortured in custody. Their treatment by the police sparked widespread protests. They stand accused of throwing stones at a presidential convoy during a political campaign in August.
And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at talisyourtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Tell Us Your English, I'm Sonia Gray. Thank you for watching.
The ruling world order has always subjugated the masses. But who are the actors behind every move? What are their real interests? We analyze